All right, everybody.
All right. Yo, come on. Come on, guys. All right. All right. Are we ready? Emmy? All good? All right, yeah, you want to close that door? All right. Well, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. Of course, I'm Louisiana's Attorney General Jeff Landry. I'm joined today by the United States Attorney for the Middle District, Brandon Freeman. We also have members of the Louisiana Bureau of Investigation, and some of our federal law enforcement partners are also participating in this conference. In this press conference. You know, since the public health emergency was declared, many of our neighbors have fallen ill, and unfortunately thousands have lost their lives. Others who never contracted the disease have also been impacted in negative ways. Hundreds of businesses have been forced to shut down, and their employees lost their jobs, leading to thousands of Louisianians filing for unemployment benefits. With record number of unemployment amounts of government benefits being paid out, of course, that led to fraudsters come crawling into and people looking to defraud and take advantage of the system. You know, unfortunately, I believe that while the governor was concentrating on closing businesses and creating mass police out of innocent citizens, he failed to lead and basically give guidance to the one agency who could have efficiently and effectively protected the unemployment trust fund. You know, I guess he felt like he had an opportunity to play Santa Claus, but unfortunately he didn't check the naughty and nice list. As we have seen far too often, both with natural disasters and the pandemic, when it attracts bad actors preying on our vulnerable neighbors, they do so with a large amount of success if we don't have the proper protocols in place and the proper oversight. Because we initially lacked the safeguards necessary to protect the unemployment trust, these bad actors came in and were able to defraud the government. And when the government allows this criminal conduct to go unchecked, it encourages normal, law-abiding citizens to become criminals as well. In other words, if they see their neighbor getting away with getting money and it's not being checked, then they feel, well, maybe the system allows them to do that as well. So we began receiving many reports about problems inside of our unemployment benefits program. We discovered multiple checks being sent to the same address or the same bank account. Think about that. We heard from employers who were receiving requests to confirm employment for individuals who never worked at their establishment. We discovered that some were applying for benefits in multiple states. And so today we're here to announce the results of some of the investigations that have been conducted. 5 people have been arrested by our office on government benefits fraud. These people are accused of stealing thousands and thousands of dollars from the Unemployment Trust Fund, a fund that, according to reports by journalists, had approximately $1.1 billion in it prior to the start of the pandemic, but yet today has been whittled down to some $50 million. To be clear, these arrests today are just the beginning. We are investigating many individuals and suspect that there are countless others who have illegally deprived our dwindling unemployment trust fund. Before I turn it over to LBI Special Agent Ernest Green, I want to thank the people of the state of Louisiana. And I want them to know that today's conference is a warning to anyone out there who has committed this type of government benefits fraud. Make no mistake, while others may have been asleep at the wheel, we are not. We are here and we will find you and we will prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law if you defraud the unemployment trust fund. That is taxpayer, employer-payer money that is supposed to be set aside when people become unemployed. And every dollar that is stolen out of that account deprives someone who needs that money in order to make ends meet. Now, I would like to invite Ernest Green, who is the lead investigator on this case, to provide some details and information.
Good afternoon. First, I want to thank Attorney General Jeff Landry and United States Attorney Brandon Freeman for the Middle District of Louisiana for their leadership in this fight to address what is unprecedented levels of unemployment insurance fraud within the system. As the Attorney General said, we have been working diligently to address complaints that we've received. I can tell you, beginning in March of this year, shortly after the shutdown was implemented, we began to see an uptick in unemployment insurance complaints. Those complaints led to criminal investigations, and today we want to announce the results of some of those investigations, as the Attorney General said. Earlier this week, we arrested Kayla Giles and Terry Thibodeau. Kayla is 33. She's of Alexandria, Louisiana. Terry Thibodeau is also 33. She is of Forest Hill, Louisiana. They were arrested on Monday for charges involving felony identity theft, money laundering, government benefits fraud, and criminal conspiracy. This pair is accused of using approximately 25 stolen identities and filing fraudulent COVID-19 related unemployment claims valued at approximately $300,000 in Louisiana and multiple other states. Our investigation shows that all of the claims filed online included personal identifying information, to include dates of birth, social security numbers, which the suspects used to establish claimant accounts. Through these online accounts, Giles and Thibodeau were able to monitor and update claimant information, file fraudulent weekly certifications, and establish payment methods. Among other evidence, we discovered the two used multiple bank accounts, prepaid debit cards, and other methods to conceal and retrieve the stolen money. In addition to identity theft, while this identity theft scheme was going on, these two individuals, we allege, made fraudulent claims using their own names to Louisiana and multiple other states. Giles received approximately $13,000 as a result of this scheme. Thibodeau received approximately $37,000 as a result of this scheme. To date, our investigation indicates that the two have pocketed nearly $100,000 as a result of their schemes. As these investigations continue, we anticipate discovery of additional stolen funds. DeMarcus Evans is 30, of Bossier City. Mr. Evans was arrested and charged with felony identity theft and government benefits fraud. He's accused of using a female acquaintance's personal information to file fraudulent COVID-19 related unemployment claims. Our investigation shows the claim, which was filed online, was completed without the knowledge or consent of the victim. The victim was employed during the period of these false claims, had no knowledge that they had been filed, and through the online account, Evans was able to, much like Giles and Thibodeau, he was able to monitor these accounts, update information to these accounts, and make weekly certifications. Again, among other evidence, we discovered that he used a prepaid debit card to conceal and retrieve the stolen money. To date, our investigation indicates that Evans defrauded the state of Louisiana of approximately $8,600. Christina French, 41, of Florida. Currently, we have a fugitive warrant issued for Christina French. French is charged with money laundering, government benefits fraud, and computer fraud. She's accused of hacking the account of a legitimate victim, someone who was getting unemployment benefits. French hacked that person's account and redirected that person's funds to accounts which she controlled. French deposited approximately $6,000 into this fraudulent account that she controlled. We discovered that she used multiple bank accounts and prepaid debit cards to conceal and retrieve these stolen funds. We're encouraging the residents of Florida who may have information on French's whereabouts to contact their local law enforcement agencies. Our agency has made efforts to notify all of the appropriate law enforcement agencies of the fugitive warrant regarding French. Amanda Garner, 33, of Covington, was arrested on charges of government benefits fraud. She is accused of filing a fraudulent unemployment claim. In this particular matter, Garner never lost employment. She was one of the fortunate ones that was able to keep a job, but yet she decided to file a fraudulent claim. To date, our investigation shows that Garner received approximately $5,200 in unemployment claims which she was not entitled to. I want to turn it back over to Attorney General Jeff Landry. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernest, and thank you to our assisting agencies for Giles and Thibodeau, the U.S. Department of Labor, the Office of Inspector General under the U.S. Department of Labor, the Rapides Parish Sheriff's Office, for Evans, the Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office, for French, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and Osceola County Sheriff's Office also assisted. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention that the Louisiana Workforce Commission has been working with us, and we appreciate the relationship between us and them. I would remind the press and the public that the aforementioned are all innocent until proven guilty. And I would now like to turn the podium over to the U.S. Attorney for the Middle District, Brandon Freeman. And I would remind the press that the information that Brandon is getting ready to put out is very key to helping us get the message out to people around this state so that they understand that there is a place to call in order to report the types of activities that are going on. What we have gotten was countless calls from people that says, hey, I just found out that someone is collecting unemployment benefits on my behalf. I did it because I just checked. And so the information that Brandon's going to put out is going to give our citizens a number that they can call. We're going to encourage them to check on their accounts. We're going to encourage them that if they see activity that they think is suspect on their, basically on their personal information, that we want them to report that to us. Brandon?
Yeah, I think the notion that we should investigate and prosecute these cases where there's merit is one on which we would all agree. As General Landry noted, the reason I'm here is to talk to you about how we get those complaints to the right place in the most efficient and most effective way. General, thanks for having me today. Thanks for asking me to be here to do this. And thanks to your office for doing the good work that you continue to do in this area. On March 27, 2020, the CARES Act was signed into law by the President of the United States. It included, among the nearly $2 trillion, $270 billion for supplemental federal unemployment insurance benefits. Additionally, on August 8, 2020, the President directed that $44 billion additional dollars in federal disaster relief funds be used to provide supplemental unemployment insurance benefits to eligible claimants. That's a massive influx of dollars into the American public. With that increase in funding, as in just about any other increase in federal funding to the American public, we expect to see a spike in fraud, and it's no different here with the unemployment insurance benefits. The problem with that is, as General Landry noted, is that it steals money, steals federal funds intended for those hardworking people, those folks who are struggling either with unemployment or just working to make ends meet. If there's only one takeaway from today, it is this: there is no organization in the United States better equipped to receive, assess, and forward complaints of allegations of fraud than the National Center for Disaster Fraud. There is no better organization. That includes COVID fraud, any fraud related to any CARES Act money. The National Center for Disaster Fraud is set up to accept any of those complaints. As you see here on the lectern, the number is 866-720-5721. Just as an overview of what the NCDF is, for those of you who don't know, as the United States Attorney for the Middle District of Louisiana, part of my portfolio is to serve as the Executive Director of the National Center for Disaster Fraud. The NCDF, as we call it, is a national coordinating agency whose primary purpose is to receive, assess, and forward complaints or allegations of natural or man-made disaster fraud. It's important to note that the NCDF itself does not investigate those claims or nor does it prosecute those claims. The NCDF serves as a clearinghouse for those claims, and our primary purpose is to receive those claims or those complaints and efficiently and effectively push them out to the most appropriate federal, state, or local law enforcement agency. It's pretty clear that fighting fraudsters is what we do. It's no different for those who are targeting CARES Act dollars. That's going to be a priority of ours for the foreseeable future, and I know it will be for the state of Louisiana. Also in March of 2020, even before the CARES Act was signed into law, Attorney General for the United States, Bill Barr, reached out to me and had two questions. One, do we need to create a place, a hotline, an entity that can receive complaints that we know are going to happen once those federal dollars get there? And two, is the NCDF already equipped to do it? And the short answer was, we are absolutely equipped to do it. And in short order, per the Attorney General's order, we made sure that the NCDF was capable of taking those complaints. And we've been doing it since, I think it was March 18th. Other efforts by the department that quickly followed, either in the days following NCDF's engagement or simultaneously, included the creation or the assignment of a coronavirus coordinator in each United States Attorney's office across the country. That's for the purpose of coordinating these cases, these investigations, and these leads, such that we can more efficiently push that information to the most appropriate federal prosecutor's office. We also have components from every major federal law enforcement agency who are joining us in that effort. Additional efforts, once we saw what types of fraud were exposing themselves, we created the Hoarding and Price Gouging Task Force. Again, a member from every United States Attorney's Office and every major federal law enforcement agency has a presence on the Hoarding and Price Gouging Task Force. Why am I telling you that? It's because I want you to understand that from the very beginning, even prior to the CARES Act being enacted, the federal government understood that we may see some of these issues, and we acted. We're continuing to act. Most recently, in fact, it was just last week, the Department of Justice announced the creation of the National Unemployment Insurance Fraud Task Force. That includes 10 federal law enforcement agencies, including, importantly, the Department of Labor, Office of Inspector General, United States Secret Service, the FBI, IRS, and many other agencies. I believe there are 9 or 10 involved. The purpose of that group is to investigate fraud schemes targeting unemployment insurance programs in the various state workforce agencies who have distributed pandemic unemployment assistance provided under the CARES Act. What does that mean simply? It means that group is responsible for doing exactly what we're talking about here today. We're looking out for every state agency who pushes this money out to ensure as best we can that that money's being treated as it should be and it's going out to the right people. We've identified a couple of things along the way in preparation for launching the task force last week. One of those is who's at risk. As Agent Green and the Attorney General noted, virtually everybody is at risk, unfortunately. If you have a name, if you have a social security number, personal identifying information, a date of birth, you're at risk. The question we asked ourselves is, who's at greater risk? Who might be a category of people who need to concern themselves with this issue? One, anybody who has already become a victim of identity fraud should take very, very serious caution in moving forward, and as the General noted, doing your due diligence to make sure claims hadn't been filed on your behalf. Two, folks who may not have been a victim of identity fraud, but those whose personal identifying information may have already been compromised. If I asked, there probably isn't a person in this room who didn't receive a letter within the last couple of years from a bank, a credit card company, a hospital that says, Mr. Jones, our data has been breached, your personal identity may have been compromised. If you received that letter in the past, even if you've never been a victim, you are at risk for this kind of fraud. So, what are some signs that those at risk may be a victim or may have become a victim? If a legitimate claimant, if a person who believes he has a legitimate claim files a claim and receives correspondence saying he's been rejected because he's already filed, that's a huge red flag. You should make those calls. Report that information. For folks who, and I believe they touched on it a minute ago, who didn't apply for benefits but receive information discussing their claim, perhaps you don't apply but you receive information suggesting that you've been approved, then that's another red flag. You should reach out. So, where do you reach out? Who do you call? I'm asking you to call the National Center for Disaster Fraud. It is critical that you start with us. The reason for that is because we have contacts in every federal law enforcement agency. We have contacts in every state attorney general's office and many local law enforcement agencies. What we will do, once we receive the complaint and determine that that complaint needs to be referred for further action, then it is almost immediately sent out to those agencies. If there's a question whether it should go to one agency or the other, it goes to both, and we're talking to both. All right? We do this in an abundance of caution to make sure, one, it gets to the right place, and two, we do it as quickly as we possibly can. So if somebody feels like they've been victimized, if they feel like they have information about a friend who may be a victim, or any information regarding fraud with respect to CARES Act funding, specifically today unemployment insurance fraud, it's 3 calls at most. Absolutely call the NCDF at the number you see here. You should also call your state workforce agency. Here in Louisiana, it's the Louisiana Workforce Commission. And third and finally, if you happen to be employed and you find yourself to be a victim, you should call your employer because they have obligations that they need to report as well. How can folks protect themselves? It's pretty simple, and you've heard us talk about it time after time. Always do your best to practice good cybersecurity and computer hygiene. The best thing you can do, and we can all do it. It's not the most fun experience. I don't like to do it, but it's important. Change your password frequently. Use complex, sophisticated passwords with numerals and characters and letters. And again, as I said, change that password frequently. One way to do this also is to place a freeze on your credit. If you place a freeze on your credit, then no one else can use your personal identifying information to obtain credit on your behalf. Only you can unlock that freeze. We ask the public to do these things and to remain vigilant. And finally, I know I've said it at least 3 times today, and I cannot overstate it. It bears repeating. If you wish to report pandemic fraud related to CARES Act funding, specifically with respect to unemployment insurance fraud, I urge you to contact the NCDF. We will make sure that we get your complaint to the right place. Thank you. Attorney General?
Yeah. Thank you, Brandon. Let me again thank U.S. Attorney General Bill Barr and the President, and again, Brandon Freeman, who is our U.S. Attorney in the Middle District, for giving us and helping us, and of course all of our federal partners that are engaged in this as well, for giving us and helping us with the resources necessary to go after these criminals. If it would not be for their resources, it would be extremely difficult for us to even begin the process of saving taxpayers the money that is running out of the employment fund right now that should not be, and making sure that eligible people who need these funds will have these funds when they need them. Again, it's important, we're calling on the citizens of this state to be partners with us as well in helping us to preserve the Louisiana Unemployment Trust Fund. Again, we urge people to call the NCDF. That's the National Center for Disaster Fraud at 866-720-5721 if you have a complaint. Or you can find that information on our website at aglandry.com. Now, I'd like to open it up to any questions the press may have. Yes, ma'am.
Do we know around how many investigations are currently underway in the state of Louisiana for this?
We won't comment on that, but there are a number of them.
I suppose the judge will ultimately decide, but you anticipate these 5 people will have to pay the money back?
Look, again, that would be a question for the courts as well when we do take and prosecute these particular cases. I think it's important to recognize that these cases are going to go to the local district attorneys. Whether they recuse them back to us is a question for those DAs. Our job right now is to try to take the complaints as they are and move the cases as fast as we can.
Will you encourage, perhaps, the DAs to prosecute in that manner?
We would be, but I would also remind you that under the past Criminal Justice Reinvestment Act that was passed, that the ability to recoup that money may be inhibited by the legislature, by the law right now. It's important to remember that. It's a frustrating part, but yes, I think those people should be required to reimburse the money that was taken out of the fund and have it go back to the fund. Absolutely.
You kind of mentioned some of the things you can look out for if you had your identity stolen, but are there like emails or letters that people get in the mail? Like, what's the most common way people are finding out?
Yeah, Ernest, would you like? Yeah, I'll let Ernest answer a couple of those because he's seen them.
So, to answer your question, yes, we have seen this happening where citizens and employers are getting letters in the mail. One of the increasing complaints that we're starting to see are people who own vacant properties. People get a hold of that information. They will use that address and have these debit cards and information forwarded to that particular address. So what we want to let the public know is if you get a letter in the mail with your name on it or with someone else's name on it at your address, please contact law enforcement immediately and we will address that.
Yeah, and if I could add to that, this is important not just for consumers but for employers too. Just from an anecdotal perspective of a family member who's employed, was never unemployed, worked for a good company, and then all of a sudden one day his boss walks up to him and says, "Hey, what's this about you filing for unemployment benefits?" They got a letter from Louisiana Workforce Commission, which is what they were supposed to do. They sent a letter to the employer indicating that what looked like a former employee had filed for benefits when in fact they hadn't. So of course they reported it properly, but that's one way that could commonly affect many consumers, and that would be of course folks who are currently employed. But as Agent Green noted, it can come in many forms.
And one of the things that has frustrated me is that, and I've always said this since the very day that I got elected some 5 years ago and then reelected last year, is that policy decisions have consequences. And I know that there was a rush to get all of this money out as quickly as possible. But things like the use of those debit cards, which I think were in good, certainly was a great idea. You wanting to get money in people's hands immediately has opened up, and we have to recognize that if we're going to use those methods of payment, they're going to create additional opportunities for people to defraud the system. And so again, as we moved and as the program was unfolded, I don't think that there was proper leadership to be able to say, are we checking these things? Are we using other agencies like the Louisiana Department of Revenue in cross-checking those claims and addresses? And certainly, did we put in place the flag to say, hey, if debit cards were going to the same address, are we making sure that, is there family members, what exactly is going? Are we red flagging? Some of those things have been cured by now, but guess what? We're what? $1 billion out of the fund before we've been able to get our hands around it. Any other questions?
Does the scope of the problem surprise you at all?
It does. It does surprise me. Well, I say that. It's shocking, but it doesn't surprise me when we let it go unfettered for so long. You know, we should be putting out information to our citizens ahead of time saying, hey, we're getting ready to send everybody unemployment benefits. If you receive a notice that you are getting benefits and you haven't, please call. And of course, this is what prompted us to work with the U.S. Attorney's Office. Again, we appreciate General Barr and his leadership in putting together a task force and recognizing that it's not only happening in Louisiana, but many other states as well.
Like, if somebody becomes a victim of this, like, how do they go about clearing their name? And, like,
again, that's another problem that we have here. It's some things that we're working on in trying to be able to clear people's names. Again, can you imagine if your employer came up to you and said, hey, why are you collecting unemployment benefits, and you're sitting there thinking, oh my, am I in trouble, or what did I do? Simply because someone has stolen your identity.
And if I could add, it's a good question, and as a former prosecutor who prosecuted cases where I had to deal with real live victims who were victims of identity fraud, it's difficult. The short answer is it's very difficult for a person to go through that, which is why we ask folks, to the best of their ability, keep records, keep your own documents, save them for a certain period. We don't often think that I might have to one day prove that I was employed over a certain period of time and that I did not file for unemployment benefits. So keep records of those things that you do, your own employment, if you're married, your spouse's employment, any records that you think can help clear your name going forward. But it's a good question because it's difficult to do. And frankly, that's why we're asking people to exercise diligence now, and in order to avoid becoming victims if at all possible.
And I would encourage citizens out there to go to our website at agjefflandry.com, where we have a number of those tips in order to try. Look, many times we're sitting up at this podium, hurricanes, natural disasters, and that's a whole other issue of fraud that goes on, in trying to inform and educate our citizens out there. Look, we want you not to become a victim. These are ways under which you cannot become a victim. And that's why I would tell the media it is so important to ask citizens that if they believe that a family member or they suspect unemployment fraud, to please call the NCDF. We're lucky. That center is located right here in Louisiana and is run by the U.S. Attorney for the Middle District. Any other questions?
just one more. Did you tell us the number of how much money was stolen here in the state of Louisiana?
So far, yeah, around $300,000, in excess of $300,000. Some of these cases, the investigations are still ongoing, but at that time, we had enough information under which there was probable cause to go ahead and make the arrest or to ask for a warrant of arrest to be issued.
So those 5 people were responsible for about 120,000 of the 300,000. Is that correct?
That's about accurate. As we sit here today, of course, those investigations are ongoing.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate it. And again, we ask the citizens of Louisiana to help us protect the Taxpayer Unemployment Benefits Fund. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.